Hello and welcome to the newest and most exciting podcast on the block, Boxmedia Talk, brought to you by Boxmedia TV, the one and only platform that brings together boxing news, entertainment, features and education, all packaged concisely and nicely as a gift from us to you.
Recent proliferation of fighters jumping between weight classes for big money fights, lots of action, and the public love it. Or do they? Today's session, we're going to discuss the recent trend in fighters jumping up rather than moving up through weights and what this means. Today's special guest on the panel, we have up-and-coming boxing coach Terry Dirt Dog Chapandama, joined by Junior The Rhodes Deslandis. Guys, let's get started. So Terry, first of all, to you, have the weight categories and titles become redundant, and if so, why?
So, at the top end, you have your Pacquiaos, your Cottos, your Canelos, your Golovkins, who the public are aware of, and they don't necessarily need belts because people know these guys are good and they know they're important to the sport. You then also have kind of everyone else afterwards, and these are the people who lack meaning without the belts, so they're kind of stuck to the weight classes. So it's almost like you need the belts to get yourself to a certain level of awareness and popularity. Once you move beyond that, you're not chasing popularity anymore. What you're chasing is that elite level status, that legacy. And often, as we find with the greats, you've had to move up in weight. So guys like Sugar Ray Robinson had to move, pretty much from light welterweight, all the way up to middleweight to seek out those big fights. The same is true for Floyd Mayweather, who started out at 126 and worked his way up. He never took massive leaps, but he knew he had to do that. Guys who take massive leaps are normally the guys that are a little bit more desperate. So if we go back in time to about 2009, 2010, you had Robert the Ghost Guerrero boxing at 135 pounds. He had some family challenges, around his wife having leukemia. Came back, made a conscious decision he wanted to fight Floyd Mayweather. Went from 135 to 147. And he fought, I think it was a Turkish guy, Ayudin, I always forget his surname. And then he fought Andre Berto, who he beat comprehensively. So he's made the leap from 135 to 147, beaten a respected welterweight in Berto, which then got him the Mayweather fight and committed him to being a 147 fighter. He's now a gatekeeper in the division. But there's a guy who made the leap successfully because he made more money than he did fighting guys like Michael Katsidis. You also have a guy who did it wrong. So Adrian Broner, prime example, from fighting guys like Gavin Rees at 135 pounds, winning easily. You then have him struggling at 147 against guys like Malinaji, who he should have really been beating. And then you have him struggling against guys like Marcus Maidana, who put him down. So there's an example where the weight's not done properly. But, if you look at Broner was already well known, and he was chasing legacy fights very early on in his career. So there's an example where the weight's not done properly.
So does that mean that in the next 5 to 10 years, maybe further on, we'll see a shift where catchweights are more lucrative, possibly so more prevalent, and then I guess we come away from the belt situation of structured weights and you're going for the big money catchweight situations each time?
Well, you're going to have people looking for the biggest fights they can make in the shortest time frame. So let's take an example. Crawford Postal was a legitimate fight for who's the best at 140.
Yeah.
And that barely did 80,000 pay-per-view buys because fans don't really care about those sorts of questions because no one really knows Crawford, no one really knows Postal.
I think it was 60,000 in the end. Latest news I've heard.
Oh wow. And the HBO break-even target was 75,000. So HBO made a loss on that, which is why they're pulling away from boxing. And that's what. So if you look at what's happening now, Bob Arum is now very pro top rank PBC cards because he's seeing his revenue model evaporate. You know, Pacquiao's not the cash cow now that Mayweather's resolved the question definitively. Bradley is on his last legs. Crawford seemingly taking forever to go to 147. You know, compare him with a guy like Guerrero, who went from 135 to 147 successfully. And I think what's happened is fans have got smarter now. The internet, BoxRec, YouTube,
Boxmedia TV, boxmediatv.com also.
Don't forget Boxmedia TV. You know, get on that, fully twittered up, Instagram, all of that.
So Terry, just to move direction slightly. I mean, from a business sense, the sanctioning bodies, fighter power, revenues, the argument is very strong. If you're Amir Khan in the hospital after taking a heavy right from Canelo, you know, you start to question: aren't these controls, these sanctioning bodies, these weight categories in place for a very, very good reason?
Yes.
Junior, let's go over to Junior here. I think we've got some thoughts here.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, you've got to look at the original size of the fighter as well. Khan came up from lightweight, so originally he was walking around quite smaller than Canelo. With the Brook incident now, he's naturally quite a big guy. He started off at welterweight. You know, if you look at other examples of people starting off at welterweight and ending at middleweight, maybe Darren Barker's a good example. He started off at light welterweight and started his professional career at middleweight. So Brook's a bigger guy, naturally bigger guy, but with Khan, it was almost an incidence of he was too small for Canelo initially. If you look at the size disparity, so when somebody's been hit with a heavier shot like that, there's a risk there. There's a big risk element. Definitely.
I mean, it's hard to looking at the nature of that knockout. It's hard to argue. But you know, I think if we then go into what's happening, or compare it to different discipline, the same argument could have been in place for McGregor versus Diaz. But look how that one ended, based on a certain skill level.
Right.
Which goes to Terry's argument.
Yeah. Right. Even McGregor said himself, like the guys that he was hitting at featherweight, he was hurting them more. You know, Diaz was able to stand up to more of his punches, which is why the fight lasted a lot longer and why he lost the first one as well. So, you know, weight disparities are there for a reason. Especially safety is a key concern.
Yeah. Terry, from a coach's perspective, would you say weights are an issue? I mean, with fighters coming down and up in weights, if you had a fighter, you know, he's walking around as a middleweight, for example, and you wanted to get him down to a lightweight or a light middleweight, what's the influence of weights for people who maybe aren't so sure about it?
In the amateurs, weight classes are important. You're dealing with guys who've often had less than 20, 25 bouts, so they're not experienced like a lot of the professionals are. So there are a lot of risks that come with it. You can have two men weighing 75 kilograms, and physiologically they're completely different, to the point where one should probably be two weight classes down on the other. So you have to be careful as a coach when you're looking at a guy, even if he tells you he's a middleweight. The main question is he powerful at middleweight? Is he strong at middleweight? Can he take a shot at middleweight? If he can do those things, you can layer on the skill he needs to win. If you're finding that he isn't, then you're looking for ways to boil him down. So what I'm trying to do as a coach is find a weight where my boxer has his advantages. You know, that's what I'm really looking for. It's rare that I'll take a guy who's boxing at 64 and make him box at 69, because he lacks the professional infrastructure to put the weights on and take the weights off properly. You know, you look at guys like Kell Brook who have nutritionists, they have the backing of the University of Sheffield, so they have experts to help them boil down from what their natural weight is. And to be honest, even if Kell trained and ate properly, he'd probably still walk around at about 12 stone. So for him boiling down to 147 like he was before, there's a lot of science. And I know there's some cynics that might say there's a little bit more than science, maybe there's some more chemistry involved. That's a different debate. But it's still a hard slog to get down to that weight. If you're looking at the Olympics, you're weighing in every other day. So I don't want to be at the absolute limit of what I can boil down to, because that means I have to starve myself for the whole tournament. I'm going to compromise. If you look at Hassan and Dan, he's a middleweight as a professional, but he had to box at 81 because 81 is what he could weigh in at consistently.
Yeah. You can't be totally dehydrated on a day of a tournament where you might be fighting 3 times in a day, for example.
Yeah.
So guys, love the technical conversation, but look, you've got something happening next week, all right? Brook GGG, all right? But excitement. So I mean, let's get this conversation going around the table. What do you think? What's going to happen, Junior?
It's hard to look past Golovkin in this instance, but I do think Brook is going to get some respect. I don't know if he's going to go the distance or if he's going to hurt Golovkin, but I think he's going to lead this fight with some detailed respect, world respect in boxing.
The implication being he's not respected at the moment?
No, but I think the challenge that he's taken is respect enough, but his performance will give him respect.
Is respect enough with a sore head and a broken nose, a few more dollars or pounds, from Eddie Hearn? Is that really enough then to go and dip down? Maybe I don't know where he goes from here either. Does he go back to welterweight?
No, he can't go back to welterweight. He definitely can't. I think if he loses to Golovkin, I think the next logical step is 154, maybe one of the Charlos, and just to take it from there. He was originally they were talking about him it being his last fight at welterweight anyway.
Is that ducking Errol Spence Jr.?
Well, if I was him, I'd run as far as I could from Jr. But, I think the only fight that he goes back to welterweight for is Khan. Lucrative fight. Grudge match. I think that's the only fight he goes back to welterweight for. I think his welterweight days are done now. No matter what happens.
Terry, what do you think is going to happen? GGG versus Brook.
It's going to end very badly for Kell Brook, and I feel sorry for him because this is the kind of fight I genuinely think you need a year to prepare for, maybe a couple of fights at middleweight, just to grow into the weight, just to solidify. So if you look at Golovkin and Brook in pictures side by side, a lot of people quite glibly put the fact out that, well, they look about the same size. Until you look at Golovkin's head and neck versus Brook's head and neck. And you can see Golovkin has a sort of frame designed to take 160 punches as a minimum. And I don't think Brook has. So when you look at Triple G, you're like, he has everything. He can out-jab you. He can just walk you down and punish you. And there's very little Brook can do because he took Curtis Stevenson's punches. And I think Curtis Stevens is a pretty heavy-handed man. So I can't see where Brook has an advantage.
What about speed? Do you think he'll carry the speed up?
So the thing about Ingle fighters is the ultimate philosophy, and I know this from brutal experience, the ultimate philosophy in the Ingle gym is be awkward. The thing about Brook is Brook's not awkward. He's technically sound and he's a little bit slick.
Yeah,
but there's nothing there that...
Brook is timing more than speed. And I think the challenge that he faces is he's fighting someone. I mean, let's be honest. The thing about Brook being bigger is nonsense, all right? Golovkin is a bigger man, bigger stature, stronger, longer reach, etc. The challenge Brook faces is that he's not someone that's going to be able to control. Based on stature and style, he's not going to be able to control the fight from long range. Brook needs to be at mid-range, exchanging, right? That's how it's going to work. And by being slick and landing his shots, right? Mid-range exchanging Golovkin equals problems, all right? For anyone. I mean, ask George Groves. All right? That's what it means. So the question is, when they exchange, is Brook going to be able to win these exchanges or survive them? And does he have enough power? Is there a secret that we don't know about in terms of his power level that means he can actually hurt Golovkin?
So here's the point, and it's one that's very rarely touched on. If you shut Golovkin's space down and you say, right, we're going to stand in the pocket head to head, we still don't know what happens in that situation. Because I think Golovkin's a leverage puncher. He doesn't look it, but I don't think he can pop those shots that he loves from short range because there's not enough distance to turn the knuckles over, which is what he loves to do. If I was coaching Brook, the first thing I'd say is, as soon as that bell goes, double jab, slide in, head on his chest, and then see if he can do something from there. If it turns out Golovkin can fight on the inside, I'll throw the towel in within 30
But I feel
seconds.
like one thing with Golovkin is that he'll take punishment if he needs to. So if you want to keep him at long range, obviously it doesn't really favour either man. If you want to get in tight, he'll take punishment and give punishment back.
Exactly. I've seen Golovkin at close range I think against Macklin, for example, and against who was the other
Hill.
British
Hill, he done it as well.
Yeah, he close range. He took the power off his shots. He threw them more frequently. Was tapping, and just found the spot. And he goes to the body or that kind of overhand hook of a right on the forehead.
The best example of that is that knockout.
But the problem with that is
Yeah.
the problem with that ultimately is that's not true inside fighting. So for me, as I've mentioned before, I'm a Durand disciple. So if I'm Brook, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to pin his arms. I'm trying to pin his arms, and I'm trying to work my inside angles, and that's going to frustrate Golovkin. Yeah. Now you're getting under his skin. Maybe rub your hair in his face a little bit, irritate him on the inside, so he starts to lose his composure. All you then have to do is pop those little right uppercuts, chopping left hooks, and you'll irritate him. And it might not win you the fight, but what it will do is it will force Abel Sanchez to go, right, we need another plan, which Golovkin's probably never heard before.
But Brook's not a messy fighter. He's not going to spoil like that. He's a clean, slick. He likes to throw clean punches. He doesn't waste punches. So in terms of putting his head on the chest, roughing up, pinning arms, Brook's not going to do that. The roughest you've seen Brook, which is also, and let's be clear, a very good indication that Brook is very, very strong, was against Porter. And I've never seen anyone physically handle Porter in that manner. So that shows us two things. Brook is not a ruffian in terms of how he fights. Number two, Brook is very, very strong.
Even Porter himself mentioned that. Porter himself mentioned that recently in the interview, that Brook is the strongest opponent he's faced. Especially with the wrestling, there was a lot of grappling in that.
Yeah.
One question I want to ask is, both these competitors have really strong jabs. Who do you guys see being on top in the jab battle?
Brook for speed, Golovkin for power.
Yeah, Golovkin's got a very powerful jab. It's like a jackhammer. And Brook's got a very clean, crisp, smart, fast jab.
I think it's a good point. I'm just not sure how influential the jab will be in this fight. I think the jab will just buy time for either man. Yeah. I think the inside...
The jab's multifaceted, so how many people really jab Golovkin to the body? How many people try and take the wind out of it? There are many things you can do with that jab. The thing is, you can't rely on it. There has to be something that comes after it.
Jabbing to the body is about range, right? If you see Merva throw a jab to the body, it's from distance, so he's out of range, into range. So it's not Brook will not be throwing a jab to the body. He will not. Even the jab in itself is going to be risky. Golovkin at times has a relatively square stance, so he can whip in that right hook very quickly. So he'll be very tentative about throwing a jab and opening up that side of the head. And he will not throw. I'm fairly certain he will not throw a jab to the body.
No, I mean it will leave his head exposed, and that's what he needs to protect. So I don't know. I don't really see I don't see the jab as being. I see the jab as buying time. So if Kell wants to jab it out for the first 3 rounds and say he done 4 rounds with Golovkin, then fair play. But after that, I'm not really too sure. But if I'll be honest and candid about it, Eddie Hearn has done a lot for British boxing in the Matchroom stable. But I would say that, as he said before, is he pulling up the fans' plonkers with this fight? Possibly. I think he possibly is. If you break it down, another kind of leading point, who is more suitable to this? Is it the Brook situation, or should we have looked more? Obviously, the Eubank thing didn't work out, but stylistically, who would probably come out best out of the 2 situations, Eubank or Brook?
Brook based on experience.
Yeah.
I don't think Eubank Jr.'s throwing 8 punch combinations on Golovkin at all. I think after Eubank feels the first jab and the first right hand, he'll box like he did in the first half of the fight against Billy Joe Saunders.
Has anyone had the audacity to throw the 8 punch combinations?
I mean, let's be clear. Eubank's been fighting punch bags.
Exactly.
So he don't. You're not going to do that against someone of Golovkin's caliber. You may even try, but looking to outpoint him by throwing pitter-patter uppercuts and hooks is not going to work or win you any points or fans. So it's a different level of fighter, different level of fight altogether. I believe that Eubank Jr. would take it to him and try and fight, because he only fights a certain way. Let's be clear. He's not going to fight behind a jab. It's not his style. But that wouldn't be the answer against Golovkin.
I think it was more of a power move by Hearn to put Brook in. I think the negotiations with Eubank proved to be difficult, and Hearn was just like, you know what? here's Brook. And I think he's sacrificed Brook in a sense to teach you back a lesson here. Because Brook had a nice fight lined up with Vargas, which would have done him, solidified him in the welterweight division.
Really? I mean, what kind of numbers would it done? What money? It wouldn't have made £1 million
to have 2 belts in the real money division.
The problem with him is the money. Brook hasn't really had the money fight yet.
Yeah, that's the problem. Why he's jumped up.
Yeah.
But as a promoter, I think Eddie Hearn's just looking at the situation. I think Eddie Hearn's taking a big gamble with Brook's career.
I really because Brook win. I think they see it as a win-win because Brook's career. Brook gets knocked out cold in this fight. If that happens, he's still got his belt.
Does he have his faculties? To go on and continue.
Well, permanent. We don't know. I mean, obviously there'll be psychological damage maybe if he loses badly, but and maybe physical. But hopefully not. But end of the day, he's still a champion in his weight division. He has a bigger public draw now. He's better known around the world. He's a bigger seller now. Win, lose or draw.
But look at this. Eddie Hearn is risking putting Brook in the Khan position. Where is Khan now?
The same place as before.
Exactly.
No. So hold on. Let's take a step back and let's look at the genesis of this fight. Right. Brook was never meant to fight Golovkin. We all know that. Like, if he had been, Eddie would have built this up from the beginning of the year. Hi, guys, you still there?
Yeah.
We're here.
We're here.
Listening intently, Terry.
Apologies. Edit that radio silence out, please.
It's all
So
staying.
basically, look, let's go back through Brook's career. 2 Alexander fights fell through. Those training camps had to be paid for, right? Tenerife happened. You still can't find out who the guy is. That's had to be paid for. I don't know how much that's costing a day to suppress whoever's snitching on the guy. But basically, they keep that off Google, right? And that costs money. So what you end up having is Eddie Hearn looking at Kell Brook going, I've been waiting for this Garcia fight to break even. It's not going to happen. So I can't keep putting you in these fights. It's taking too long for me to recoup my money. You need to fight Golovkin because the word out of Sheffield is Brook didn't want that fight because he wants to unify the division and welterweight. That's what he really wants to do.
Of course, he didn't want the fight, but he has no choice. He needs. I think Hearns promised him a multi-million-pound fight, and he's not going to get that in the welterweight division. And so I think it's a calculated gamble. It's not an opportunistic one, but I think the point I want to get, I want to say, Terry, do you think it's the right move, Terry? That's what I want to know from you.
For Brook,
Yes.
he could have bided his time. Fought Marquez, taken the 300K and offering, whatever it was. I'd have taken it back. I would have sat it out and I would have just said, you know what? Let me fight Canelo after this, or let me fight there. I would have taken that incremental revenue and just left Golovkin alone. Because Golovkin on his own doesn't make that much money. He doesn't bring a lot to the table, which is why he's come over here.
Yeah, but with Brook, they tried to get him big fights. They've offered Bradley fights, they've offered Garcia fights, they've offered Furman fights. Nobody seems to want to take the risk of Brook at welterweight.
I don't think it's that. What money's been offered by Hearn to that's the issue, I think. But guys, exciting as this is, we talk about Brook a lot. Let's talk about the man, right? The most dangerous man in boxing, Gennady, GGG, Golovkin.
It's a big drama show.
I want to know, Junior, from camps such as Mayweather's and a few other corners, GGG's received some criticism for not moving up, not fighting like Andre Ward. Is this deserved?
Definitely. I mean, he was very vocal and critical of Canelo fighting Khan. Yet his next move was to fight Brook. At his weight. He definitely didn't want anything to do with Andre Ward at the moment. Andre Ward tried for the fight. He was waiting at 168 as long as he could. He's gone up now to fight Covenant. It was probably more of a dangerous fight. So he didn't want to go up to fight, I think, Froch as well. I think they wanted to fight at catchweight initially as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So that's what Mayweather's called out, and it's a valid point. You're asking people to come up and you're not going up yourself. So it's a definitely valid point. We'll see how this fight pans out, because if Brook does better than Khan, then that looks bad on Golovkin.
But what does doing better than Khan really mean? Because Khan hanged about for a few rounds and essentially got knocked out. Do you know the amount of people that have said, "Oh yeah, but Khan was winning on points"? But a football match is 90 minutes. If it's 0-0 at half time, or it's 1-0 at half time, and you come back and lose 8-1,
I guess doing better than Khan means don't go hospital. You know? I guess doing better than Khan is to survive a boxing career afterwards, and that was my point. You know, where is Khan now? He's talking about going to UFC. There's no fights for Khan.
Khan is in the same place he was before.
But
just got £1 million more in his pocket. He's the same place he was before. Not really active. Still randomly calling out the top money earners in the divisions. Because let's be clear, as far as I can tell, Amir Khan is looking to cash out from the sport. All right?
Yeah, he wants to cash out. I think he wants to fight in the Middle East.
He
wants to fight in the Middle East, probably on a yacht. With a few shakes and then just cash out. But I don't know. Looking at the GGG situation, I get the idea of moving up. Boxing's about legacy, but if he's making decent money from what he's doing, he could go for the one mega fight, maybe against Ward, Kovalev, and cash out that way. But really and truly, I guess even Terry, I wouldn't mind your opinion on this. Why does Golovkin need to go up, potentially lose, affect his legacy when he's kind of in cruise control right now?
And to add to that, Terry, based on your earlier point, when the biggest financial gain is through fighting Canelo as well.
So there are many levels to this. I think we go through the history books. Henry Armstrong from lightweight to middleweight champion. Roberto Duran from lightweight to middleweight champion. Sugar Ray Leonard from light welter to super middleweight champion and contender. Thomas Hearns went from 147 all the way to cruiserweight. That's what the greats do. The greats travel. You travel. The only person I'd count as an exception to that, well, there are two exceptions, I think, are Hagler and Carlos Monzon. Are probably the only two I'd count as exceptions, but they fought in quite deep divisions, so you can understand why the fights came to them as opposed to them chasing the fights.
So I think you missed out Azuma Nelson there, Terry.
And Roy Jones Jr.
No, it's tick of the tongue.
bit of bias there. But
no. Wait. But when you're talking about guys like Hagler and Monzon, you're talking about guys who had almost perfect careers. I don't know if Jones had an almost perfect career, and I'd say the same for Nelson as well. But I think that's the only reason I left those guys out. But when you're talking about those legacies where you're like, these guys left at the right time, the right way.
Yeah. But Terry, didn't weight really affect Jones's career? Because if he stopped after winning the heavyweight title, he'd have been one of the greatest pound for pound fighters there was.
And he would have got popped for doing steroids.
I think he would have got away with it because no one clocked him at that point. But he went back down, which is what we're talking about. Brook, where does he go from here if he loses? He went back down to fight Tarver and was never the same fighter, and that's where his demise went.
That's why I said Brook will know very early on if he can win the fight. If he can't win the fight, you may as well just let it end as early as possible. Don't be a 12-round hero because they're bigger fish to fry. Like, once people see Brook's vulnerable, he'll get those fights. But the problem he has is Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn is the biggest blocker to Brook having those fights. If I was Kell Brook, I'd do the Nigel Benn thing, where Nigel Benn lost, went over to America, beat Doug DeWitt, beat Iran Barkley, and all of a sudden, he's legitimized, more so than Eubank internationally, because Nigel Benn's the guy that did Iran Barkley in a round. If Brook went to the States and just said, you know what, I'm fighting all of these guys on their home turf, they're taking the fights.
So just to kind of touch on my earlier point and get clarification, GGG, even you mentioned it earlier, Terry, as well, regarding weights and stuff like that. GGG's fighting at his weight that he feels comfortable at. The division clearly isn't challenging him, or that it's an average division, kind of like the cruiserweight situation. He's cleaning up all the fighters in there. So do you guys, as a general kind of rule of thumb, would you say that he's done his job? Why should he have to go up to be classed as an all-time great? Why isn't he an all-time great right now?
He's nowhere near an all-time great. Now let's be absolutely clear about this.
What does he need to? What does he need to do bar going up? If he's in his comfortable weight, this is how he feels. He feels comfortable. He feels strongest. Why wouldn't he be an all-time
He
great?
needs. I think he wants to be undisputed first of all, a middleweight, and I think he has a right to do that. He hasn't fought a world-class fighter.
Is that his fault?
No, it's not his fault. It's not his fault, but it does prevent him from being classed as an all-time great. All these other all-time greats, they fought multiple world-class fighters. They've beaten other all-time greats.
Exactly. To be an all-time great, you need a legendary match. You know, could Ward be that legendary match? Could Canelo be that legendary match? He needs those legendary titles to be an all-time great. Legendary fight.
Because I look at Golovkin and I say to myself, he'd have lost against Nigel Benn, he'd have lost against Hagler, he'd have lost against Gerald McClellan at 160, he'd have lost against Tony, he'd have lost against Jones. All of these guys are guys I think are just that level above him because they just fought. You know, you could throw Mike McCallum in there as well as a guy who would have given Golovkin all kinds of trouble. And I think that's the problem with modern boxing. I've got my coach's head on for a second. All those guys were pretty old school in their approach, and what they knew was how to nullify whatever strength you had. Hagler could nullify, McCallum could nullify, and we don't coach that into fighters anymore. That's why guys go out there and try and either dodge Golovkin or have a shootout with him. No one ever tries to nullify what he does, and that's why he would have struggled in previous eras, because he would have got frustrated because no one would have given him the distance or the angles to get his shots off.
Do you think there's guys out there that could do that? Maybe a Lara or somebody like that could actually nullify what the
No, because you need a different skill set to what I call the quintessential Cuban hit, dip, slip, and run. You know, you need a different skill set. You need to be able to engage in trench warfare, and then when it's convenient for you, step back, work at range, come back in. You know, so the fight happens on your terms.
Yeah, Lara's a long-range fighter, beautiful long-range fighter, big long-range fighter. Guys, look, this is exciting. I can tell, there's a lot of tension in the air as well. Let's go around the table. Very concisely on predictions for the fight. Junior, what's going to happen? Which round? Who wins? Etc.
I'm going to go with Golovkin round 10.
Golovkin 10.
And I think Kell's going to hurt him.
Ooh.
I think he's going to hurt him. I think, like you said, there's a power. There's a power that he's hiding there.
Terry.
The Golovkin stoppage in 4.
Adrian.
Terry, I think I've read your prediction card before as well. I think GGG is gonna put him down in 4. He'll definitely go down in the 4th. Whether he wins in the 4th or 5th, I'm still undecided. I think I might go put down in the 4th and stoppage in the 5th.
Ooh, adamant. We shall see. I am going to sit on the fence. Guys, look, it's been a very exciting discussion. We could keep going for another hour. It's really whetted the appetite for next Saturday. But, unfortunately, we've run out of time. But, until next time, and I imagine we'll probably have another discussion after the fight when people backtrack on their predictions. We hope not, Terry. But until then, look, this is Boxmedia Talks. We are Boxmedia TV. Log into boxmediatv.com for the latest boxing news, entertainment, and educational features. Look out for our next podcast. Until next time, guys, keep your guard up.